Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. Good afternoon. Great to see everybody. It's a beautiful day in Austin, Texas. My name is Rafa Valiente, and I'm the managing director of the middle market division of Texas Capital Bank here in Austin. And I'm very proud to be here to introduce these two gentlemen that are going to be having a conversation today and enlightening us with feedback there. Sorry. And their discussion is going to center around the relationship between the universities and markets and how they work together to develop a strategic business plan and be able to bring high-impact innovations through, mostly discovered through academic research to the markets and to the world. So kind of to that point, too, like I said, I'm with Texas Capital Bank. For the last 2 years, we've been developing and implementing business strategy and implementing changes within our own bank. Our CEO, Rob Holmes, big Longhorn, who was a cowboy here, and with him at the helm, we've put together what's the first full-service financial firm founded and headquartered in Texas, and something that we're very proud of. So we've got a very strong business model, along with a very strong balance sheet that we are able to leverage to bring world-class services and products to our clients. And so, in short, we're very passionate about bringing the best possible people to service our clients, whether it's opening their first checking account or working with our investment bank, working with our treasury management partners, or anything in between for the full life cycle of a company. So again, very happy to be here, very proud to support the event and the university and to be here today. So with that, I'm going to give a little bit of introduction, a little resume. Jay Hartzell is the 30th president at the University of Texas. After joining the faculty in 2001, he went on to serve as the 12th dean of the McCombs School of Business. As president, he launched a 10-year strategic plan to become the world's highest impact public research university, amplifying both the university's service to students, staff, faculty, and society, as well as its ability to address the great challenges facing our world, particularly in the areas of energy, the environment, technology, society, health, and well-being. Jim Breyer is the founder and CEO of Breyer Capital, premier venture capital firm headquartered in Austin. Jim's been an early investor in more than 40 technology companies that have completed highly successful public offerings or mergers. As a lead investor and director, many of these investments, such as Facebook, returned well over 100 times their cost, and over a dozen more have returned well over 25 times their cost. He's previously served as an investor and or lead director at Circle, Dell, Etsy, Facebook, Legendary Entertainment, Marvel Entertainment, Spotify, Walmart, and 21st Century Fox, as well as many others. Busy. Over the past several years, Jim's developed a deep personal and investment interest in long-term oriented entrepreneurs and teams working in artificial and augmented intelligence, quantum technology, and computation-driven healthcare and life sciences. I'm really looking forward to this discussion and really proud to be here and for Texas Capital to sponsor this event. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Rafa, thank you very much. And we're thrilled to have Texas Capital Bank not only be part of this, but an increasing part of our community here in Austin. So I want to say thanks, everybody, for coming out. And just as a brief aside, I want to say thanks. Emily Reagan is right over here, and Emily and her team for putting it on today. So thank you very much. Several years ago, back, as I like to say, when I was the dean of the business school and still happy, Emily approached and said, you know, UT has not leaned into South by like we should. And we leaned in, and then COVID hit, and then here we are, I think, kind of back with a vengeance. And so today's been a lot of fun for me, and I want to say thanks to everybody who's been part of this, not only to make it happen, but also to join us here today. And I think, you know, you can trace out the history of Austin, and, you know, UT's been there all along, or at least the last, you know, 100 plus years. But there are these moments and these activities that sort of elevated the city in the national landscape or the international landscape. And, you know, we were talking about Dell Computers, one of those moments, the foundation of Dell, the filming of Austin City Limits as a TV show where people thought that was the real skyline and that looked like a good place they wanted to be. But clearly South by is one of those other just big jumps in the reputation and brand and allure of the city. I'm walking around here thinking, how many more people want to move here now? And that's a good thing. But it's really great for us to be part of this incredible event and see all of you here. And one of those things in the last several years, as great as Austin's trajectory has been, it feels like it's had this just sort of takeoff the last few years. And one of those things that we've talked a lot about at the university is, look at all the people moving here now. And people say, like who? And I say, like Jim Breyer. And the fact that Jim and Angela have chosen Austin as their home is a lot of things for us, but it's partly a signal of the kind of the Austin thesis and our development as a city. It's also obviously great for the university to have people like Jim around us. But I also think it opens up new opportunities for our students and for our entrepreneurs. And part of today is sort of telling that story about us. So with that, Jim, maybe just start off, and Rafa read your bio, but talk a little bit about your experiences and your journey and kind of why Austin now for you.
Thank you, Jay. Can you hear me up in the sky deck? Excellent. Moments for reflection are unfortunately too rare. I'm here with one of our great presidents of a university, if not the best president of a university in the United States. And a little later, I'll go into why I believe that. I was very fortunate to be on the Harvard Corporation Board for a number of years, very involved with Stanford University. I have never seen a leader who is doing so many tactical and strategic things for the university, for the city of Austin, for the state of Texas, and we see each other every couple of weeks, and I always look forward to it. Jay is a great listener, so that's the brief summary on Jay Hartzell.
You can go on.
I will go on and on and on. So my journey, it started, my parents, I had a genius mathematician mother, pretty smart father, but she was the genius, and they were in Budapest, Hungary in 1956 as students. The Russian tanks rolled in. They moved to Vienna, and then my mom turned down a scholarship at Stanford to be with my dad, who received a scholarship at Yale. And I was born in New Haven, Connecticut, grew up in the Boston area and the Bay Area. But I start with that because we'll talk a little bit about technologies and semiconductors and quantum. My advice for all of you, children, grandchildren, others, if you remember The Graduate and the one-word answer, plastics, the two-word answer today is study linear algebra. Linear algebra sits more than any other specialty at the base of quantum technologies. And so, again, I love speaking to students. I love speaking at universities. I'm always learning. And that's one piece of advice that I'm happy if you all pass on, because when I visit the great mathematicians around the country at many of our esteemed universities, they'll tell me, you're the first venture capitalist who ever called and asked for a meeting. And we know that's not the case with computer science and electrical engineering and the medical school. And so I think there really is a fascinating role for mathematics and interdisciplinary thinking as we look forward. One final anecdote. When I was on the Harvard Corporation Board, our president, Drew Faust, who was fantastic, asked me to be point person from the corporation on the Harvard Medical School search. And I ended up interviewing 30 or so phenomenal individuals. Johns Hopkins, Stanford, Harvard, Mass General, I could go on and on, MD Anderson. There was only one, and this was 2016, when I asked, what role will computation and artificial intelligence play in the world of medicine? The only one who had a good answer for that was our current dean, George Daly of the Harvard Medical School. And so that helped me embark on what I would call a 10-year strategic plan, which has become 15. Spin out, work with many of our best medical institutions, get highly proprietary, important data. Hospitals, like universities, will often argue who's the best. The first deal was a spin out of Memorial Sloan Kettering. And when I asked Memorial Sloan Kettering, who's the best cancer center, of course we are. My next visit was MD Anderson. I would ask MD Anderson, who has the best cancer practice? We do. So the fact of the matter is there's a lot of things going on these days, I hear, in artificial intelligence. Proprietary, important data that universities, medical schools, and other academic institutions and hospitals have. That is an extraordinary short supply. So I've made 12 investments like the Memorial Sloan Kettering spin-out, and just a 30-second summary on how it goes. It's always a new company. I am a venture capitalist, not a venture socialist. As students have asked me many times when I speak on campus, why are you happy with venture capitalist is your title? But we start with a great medical team. We have a license deal with the hospital or the cancer center or the medical school. And then my job is to go and find the brilliant 30 to 40-year-old women and men who have spent the last decade or so at Alphabet, Amazon, Apple. I can find those people. It starts, though, with the incredible talent of the medical founders. And I'm always working on one or two of these. So that's the brief story and what brings me to today.
Great, thanks, Jim. And I think you did a great job of laying out some of the broad themes you're excited about, where you're spending your time the last 10, 15 years. Let's come back around, if you would, to Austin. And the couple of things that come out lately, Milken Institute predicted Austin's number 2 fastest growing tier 1 city. The Keenan Institute came out with number 2. Like our athletic department, we want to be number 1. But as you think about what drew you to Austin, and in particular among the things you saw, linear algebra, life science, et cetera, what are the things that you think in Austin are really more special here perhaps than the rest of the country, or what are our special opportunities?
We were speaking before our panel. I was on the board of Dell for many years, and Michael and Susan are dear friends, and they kept talking to me and my wife about moving to Austin. Why are you spending all this time in California and New York? Live in Austin. And finally, 3.5 years ago, we listened. We both loved Austin, love the Hill Country. We're here forever. And so I also mentioned to Jay, we've seen 1 or 2 Californians move to Austin, Texas in the last couple of years, some better known than others. And I know almost all of them. I was speaking yesterday morning with an outstanding couple whose children will be graduating high school next year. They're in West Los Angeles. And they said, Jim, the only reason we would not come to Austin, we hear the traffic is terrible. And I said, you're telling me from West Los Angeles the traffic is terrible in Austin, Texas? And they laughed. But last year at South by Southwest, this is my 20th South by Southwest, by the way, number 20, I was on a fireside chat with Michael Dell. And of course, one of the questions was, what will get in the way of Austin over the next 5 or 10 years becoming phenomenal and growing? And Michael said, absolutely nothing. And he raised his hand and he said, I am so long for the next 5 years and 10 years, Austin, Texas. That says it all. So really exciting. And Michael still feels that way. I saw him Wednesday night. So those are some of the positives. The interdisciplinary nature of the University of Texas is more important than ever. I've spent so much of my time in the world of higher ed trying to get the chemistry professor at Harvard College to speak to the chemistry professor at Harvard Medical School. And those conversations are really hard. Last I checked, universities are really siloed. And what Jay and the University of Texas are doing is breaking down many of those silos. He just hired a phenomenal leader of the Dell Medical School, who I met. She was from the Mayo Clinic, met her a couple weeks ago, and she's going to make a big difference. So when we think about the challenges but the opportunities, how does the medical school interact deeply with Cockrell, with the liberal arts, pharmacy? I could go on. And that doesn't always happen naturally, and it takes leadership to break down those silos.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Jim. In some ways, by not having a medical school for the first 100+ years of our existence, we have a perverse benefit because we don't have to break down things. We're sort of starting from more of a whiteboard. So we won't have 2 chemistry departments, right? So we're going to have outstanding people in both places, but it's easier to sort of build it in a way that's collaborative than to make it collaborative ex post. So that's something we're really excited about. And for us, a lot of the strengths of the university around computing, data science, robotics, et cetera, that sort of technology vector where you know better than I do, but I think where a lot of the medical life science is going has a lot of tailwinds for us. One of the things and you've been very helpful in this, one of the things we spend a lot of time talking about is how do we get companies, especially the kind of companies in the new Austin or the new Texas, how do we get them connected with us and find ways to work with us? And it could be anything from they want to hire our students to they have a problem that our faculty or students can help solve, or something even more, just granular where co-locating around us can lead to good things. You've, as you said, been very involved and helpful at places like Stanford and Harvard. What have you seen go well, or what are the lessons learned about ways to get companies and universities to work together?
There are a lot of lessons learned. I will start with that. I think universities, and of course even the excellent universities, don't understand how daunting and complex it is for companies, unless you're Alphabet, et cetera, to build relationships. They're very complex. In some universities, there's a research person who is in charge of licensing. I've never seen that work, by the way. Never say never. But if everyone has to go through the technology licensing individual, innovation, entrepreneurship, the natural partnerships don't happen. So it comes down to the deans, comes down to the president and his team, and of course, it comes down to faculty and postdocs. But it's really difficult to make it work, and yet it's happening here in Austin in ways where it doesn't happen in most other places. If you think about it, and Jay taught me this, and all of you know this, UT Austin is certainly the best university within 1,000 miles. And that's not true with universities such as Harvard and MIT, Stanford, Berkeley. There is competition within the neighborhood, if you will. And so one of the great opportunities for UT Austin, continue to attract phenomenal talent, students, faculty, postdocs, find ways to build affordable housing for all of these individuals, because that is a huge challenge. And then finally, work hard at finding intersection points. And the University of Texas and Breyer Capital, UTIMCO, are co-sponsoring a Life Sciences Computation Summit, March 20th, 21st, here at the university. We have about 150 to 200 of literally the world's leading computer scientists, doctors, leaders from MD Anderson, from Mass General, UCSF. They're all coming to Austin, Texas to talk about this intersection between computation, healthcare, life sciences, trying to eradicate cancer, certainly over the next 5 to 10 years in certain disciplines. It should be a great couple days.
Should. And we're super excited about it. We'll probably get back around at some point, back to life science. I agree with you completely on that. And, you know, one of the things we've been talking a lot about is our real estate holdings as a university. And I see some real estate developer friends here. And, you know, Austin's been booming. You look at the construction here up and down Rainey. This is not the Rainey of a little bit ago. And, you know, we spend a lot of time thinking about how can we get more collisions between really smart people. And that's part of what happens on campus. But when it comes to the private sector and you know, company to company or company to university, talk a little bit about what you've seen as far as proximity and location. Is it important? Is it because the people are there, they happen to spin out and stay there? Or is being close to each other important in what you've seen?
What really is important, again, in my humble opinion, is centers of excellence that are close together. So not everyone necessarily, I would suggest, needs to be in and around Austin, Texas, call it downtown and where the campus is. I'm extraordinarily glad that the Medical Innovation Campus is being built out the way it is here. But when we talk about other locations, there is no reason, given the University of Texas land, there can't be a quantum-oriented center 30 minutes from downtown Austin. And I've seen that work at Stanford, where there was a lot of Stanford Park and Stanford companies that interacted closely. I will also offer this personal perspective. Arguably, Cambridge, Massachusetts is the life sciences technology capital of the world. Harvard and MIT certainly had graduates who participated. Harvard and MIT didn't buy any of the land or the buildings or lease. And that was a huge opportunity missed. My belief, knowing what I know, is it will be different at the University of Texas.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. As my joke is, I've seen too many rich real estate developers to not want to be part of that. So we'll have the university be partners, I think, in a way that will hopefully align incentives and be good for everybody involved. One of the key parts to making all this happen is clearly capital. And with the movement from California, that's an influx of capital and expertise and talent. We're also blessed, you mentioned UTIMCO, our endowment, which is either number 1 or 2 in the country, but we still need your donations. I just want to be clear with everybody. We need your help. That's for the entire system. We're broke. It's legislative session time. So, but I want to talk a little bit about capital. And the pensions are downtown, the endowment's downtown, money's been moving here. But where is Austin on kind of the capital journey? Is that a plus for Austin today, a minus? Is it neutral? How do you see it going?
I think it really depends on the stage of capital and the type of capital. UTIMCO is breathtakingly good. Simple as that. The current head of UTIMCO was our private equity head at what was Harvard Management, which reported into the corporation. When we lost him, many of my friends in private equity, I'm still on the board of Blackstone, said to me, "You just lost the best guy at Harvard Management to Austin, Texas." And so UTIMCO's extraordinary. UTIMCO doesn't necessarily play a role in the first check or two for entrepreneurs. Rightfully so, they're very risk-adjusted, risk-averse. And one of the great successes of Silicon Valley, of course, is the role venture capitalists have played over decades in helping to build companies. And in Silicon Valley, if you fail honorably, you will get backed again in a heartbeat. That's very rare. Austin's pretty good. Paris, where I'll be speaking on some similar topics in June, is truly terrible. If you fail, you're just ostracized. And so I think there's a culture of, depending on the industry, understanding there's always a dark day. Every one of my boards, there's at least one dark moment where we're all looking at each other. What are we going to do? Happened at Dell, happened at Walmart. I can go on and on. Blackstone, we recently had to do that in November around product B-REIT, and Steve Schwartzman and John Gray stood together, and we believe we have solved it. But that's also part, whether it's a university board, universities, in general, interaction, there has to be that spirit of there are tough times. Drew Faust would often tell me, I've put together this fabulous 3 to 5 year strategic plan for Harvard that I would like to bring to the corporation. And I said, of course, that's my passion. 24 hours before our meetings, 8 times a year in Cambridge, Massachusetts, there was a fire of some sort. Unionization of graduate students, whatever it might be. And so that's also one of the challenges, I think, trying to understand strategy really matters. Jay and his team have put together a phenomenal 10-year strategic plan, but we all know there are days, weeks where there are emergencies that pop up, and we all have to deal with it together.
Great, thank you. And you know, we talked about capital, and you mentioned universities in their, I guess, sort of checkered past with trying to get ideas out in the market. You know, we've been really putting emphasis on this, and Christine Dixon-Thiesing up here was part of the first panel today. She's built a great team out, and we're trying to, I guess, aspire to have culture change, to be supportive of getting things out. And I think we're doing great work. And if you haven't been down to the Speakeasy, not now, but after this is over, you should go check out a lot of the startups and things that are there. I think it's really inspirational. One of the ones, let me back up. So back to capital. So early stage capital is something the university's going to try to do more in. With your help and the help of a couple other great people, we've started the ability to make early stage investments in companies, take equity positions in firms. And our first ever investment was just in the last few months. It's a company called Girata Film, which is out of our College of Pharmacy. The dean used to be here. He may still be here. Sam Poliak. Sam, there's Sam. So it's really cool. And Sam, if I get it wrong, don't tell anybody. But they are able to take vaccines, for example, and turn them into films that are shelf-stable and don't have to be refrigerated. So you think about what we all went through with COVID, trying to figure out, especially in tough markets, if you will, how to get those technology, and it's really cool. And we think it's going to be good for us, but also good for society. And a lot of what we're trying to do there is not only important for that effort, but it's important to attract more people like the Girata founders. And this ability to attract talent is something we spend a lot of time on. And for us, it's students, faculty, our staff, alumni, supporters, people like you. What have you seen, whether it's the Bay Area, Harvard, other places? What's important for us to keep our eye on for Austin as a destination for talent?
I mentioned the housing costs, and for, call it the brilliant postdocs who might want to come to Austin, Texas, even coming from the Bay Area or Cambridge, Massachusetts, there's a real surprise at how much the housing costs. So I think the university facilitating affordable housing for our students, postdocs, junior faculty. Some cases, if you're hiring, we know senior faculty. Thinking that through carefully, which you're doing, is very important. There was a time when Silicon Valley and the San Francisco Bay Area was unquestionably the magnet for entrepreneurship innovation from around the world. It's still a magnet for many disciplines, but it's moved south from the city to Palo Alto, Menlo Park, Cupertino, which you all know. And so I think that is one of the challenges. What has gone right in Silicon Valley and San Francisco? What has not worked? The same would be true for Cambridge, Massachusetts, for New York, et cetera. And then one other piece of advice for what it's worth. We spoke about the Dell board. A couple of my best friends in the world were on that Dell board where we got to know each other. They live in a little city called Dallas, Texas. And of course, I'm effusive about Austin, Texas. And they always shoot me an email and say, don't forget about North Texas. And there's a lot of truth. There are some great hospitals in North Texas. Houston, of course, with MD Anderson. San Antonio has phenomenal talent. And so one of the strengths of UT and one of the huge advantages, integrate as well with these other cities, because there is incredible talent, and for some of these groundbreaking initiatives like the life sciences, MD Anderson, the Dallas hospitals, San Antonio play a huge role.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you know, something we've not talked much about yet is our policy choices. And you know, part of, I think, the special sauce of Texas has been, in general, a pro-business, pro-get-stuff-done attitude by our policymakers. It is the legislative session, so we love them down there. They are phenomenal. They're great. And we look forward to June. And you know, probably our biggest ask as it's not just us. We're part of a big consortium of 13, 14 universities, 30-plus companies. You know, we have this huge opportunity. We heard about in the first panel about chips and semiconductors, and it's something where I think universities and private sector should work together. It's a every few decades opportunity, I think, for the state of Texas, and it's important, we think, for policymakers to help in that way. And we've been very blessed. So Representative McCall and Senator Cornyn, who are going to be here on Monday, have been part of that to really advocate. But could you talk a little bit about policy choices? So if you were, you know, legislator or mayor or governor for a day, what would you be thinking, other than the giant pay cut you just took? What would you be thinking about trying to work on in that role?
Well, I've told Jay the two hardest jobs I believe in the world are being an entrepreneur and being a university president. And I really do believe that. My advice, if we take something like semiconductors, the CHIPS bill, obviously huge available budgets, working collectively, cooperatively, and understanding strengths and weaknesses of a geography and an institution, I think, is really important. So again, governor or decision maker for a day, I would say when we're trying to pull together state initiatives, understand that the best engineering school in Texas is at the University of Texas, Austin. Understand the best medical program, best hospital may very well be in Houston, Texas, MD Anderson. MD Anderson should be, I think over time, will be working far more closely with UT Austin. And those are the kind of partnerships that, from a state level, I was to make decisions. It's really be introspective about strengths, weaknesses, and working collectively to understand that in a realistic fashion.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because we talk a lot about, I mean, there's no sense in us replicating something that is redundant in some global sense. So how can we leverage what somebody else does really, really well? So one of the ones that's been really fun to watch has been with MD Anderson, you know, part of the UT system. Their clinicians in cancer are sending over patient histories to our data scientists, who then run things through their AI stuff and come back with predictions, and they can build a digital twin of a person. So they can build a Jim Breyer model that's specific to Jim based on what we know, right? And find ways to predict how care is going to go. And to us, it works great, because we've got the data scientists and the AI machine learning experts, the computational science people. They've got patient histories, data sets, and clinicians, and that's a nice marriage, right? And there's no reason for us to try to rebuild all that from scratch in that way. Another big effort for us is obviously around energy. And the opportunities there, whether it's around, doing oil and gas in a more innovative, clean way, or we've got a big ask up for the legislature around molten salt reactors, so nuclear, and how can we make nuclear more innovative and safe. So, as we go forward as Austin, as this innovation hub, what are things you'd be looking for to see, are we on the right track? Like, what's our scoreboard? So, football's easy, we got a scoreboard. Basketball's easy, basketball's going to start here in a little bit. You're not missing the game yet. But what's a scoreboard equivalent you'd be thinking about if you were looking to see how it's going?
Again, I think great institutions build biases over time, whether it's the city of Austin, whether it's UT, whether it's MD Anderson. One specific example, when I'm spinning out potential newcos from MD Anderson, they never raise the idea of taking equity. They want a really significant license deal. And my recommendation to University of Texas has been, be flexible on something like that. Take some equity, have the real estate community participate in some of the commercialization efforts around something like the medical campus, but understand there have to be a number of different factors, not just one way to do things. And it's easy to mention that at a specific level, but again, it's extraordinary. Stanford does and did a phenomenal job of taking equity as a university in what are household names today, Alphabet, Cisco. When their graduate students left, or undergrad, we saw the Snap founder this past week in Austin, who was a Stanford undergrad. The university and different entities, such as Stanford Management, found ways to not just get license deals, but get pieces of equity. And it takes a decade, but building that portfolio, I think, is really, really important. Not as much for the money necessarily that it may result in, that matters, but for the idea that there is shareholder equity participation by the university and the greater university in many of these, hopefully, wildly successful companies 10 years from now.
Yeah, thank you for that. And, they would take away my PhD in finance if I didn't say I like money. I like money. But a lot of what we spend our time on is the stuff that really just should happen, right? Austin should keep going great. We should find more ways to get our students to have great outcomes, right? So take these ideas out to the world. And we are blessed with, we don't play a very long game, right? So we're not in this for, we joke about the football team. You've been on a lot of boards. We don't have a stock price, right? So we don't have this kind of quarterly earnings report in some ways. So that luxury of taking the long view has been great. I want to come back a little bit. You've talked about things from a computational standpoint. You've talked about life science. My broad question is, if you were, you talk about going long Austin, if you were long certain sectors or industries, what would you think? And then in particular, maybe I know you have a lot of deep expertise and passion around quantum. And so for those of us that their main exposure to quantum is an old TV show that's been rekindled called The Quantum Leap, If you could talk a little about quantum in particular and why you think it's important. You know, we've got, I think, the best experts for 1,000 miles in that space, but why are you long quantum in particular?
The very simple explanation on quantum, and again, it was enjoyable to speak to Jay prior to this. I'm very fortunate, very lucky. When I call faculty members or leaders, the call often gets returned. And I was with 2 Nobel Prize winners a couple of weeks ago in Cambridge, Massachusetts, both physicists. They disagreed with so many of each other's theses. We weren't in the same room at the same time, but they both agreed the way to conceptualize it, we have lived in an era, obviously, of bits and bytes, ones and zeros with computing, Moore's law. They described the quantum opportunity. Think of a balloon. Think of all the different representations within that globe or balloon. That's what quantum technologies will do. So, again, the science is extraordinary. Again, Einstein got quantum wrong, so there's some smart people who missed it. But what is really exciting, it's not necessarily about quantum computers. I've looked at over a dozen quantum computing startups in the United States, and I've decided not to invest at this time because I think it's 5 or 10 years away. And Microsoft and Amazon has co-located their quantum effort next to Caltech. They will be big winners. But what is happening now is where AI algorithms are being developed for NVIDIA and AMD chips, and they're solving real problems around security. Obviously, one of the huge threats is significant attacks to whether it's 3-letter agencies, DoD, universities, hospitals, and what most experts agree with, not necessarily the time frame, but over the next 2 to 3 years, quantum technologies by foreign governments or others will have significant impact on our data security. So we as a country, we as a university, when it comes to quantum, it's not just about the quantum computers, it's areas like quantum and the impact on our data security, which we all know already receives all sorts of threats. At Walmart, Doug McMillon, the gifted CEO, would come into a board meeting every time, and we would always ask him, I would always ask him, how many times has Walmart seen potential threats and compromises? And he said about 10,000 this morning. So this is an ongoing effort. The other area which is really exciting, to finish on quantum, we talked about the intersection of life sciences, medicine, and computation. Today at UCSF, in the cardiology department, they are using a quantum set of what we would call microscopes. Think of that quantum microscope being able to identify your cardiovascular system and soon to be the brain at 1,000 times magnification of what's available today. These are tested. We know rollouts in the world of medicine occur slowly, but I personally witnessed the actual use of 4 of these quantum microscopes, and it is far more interesting than anything I read about in terms of augmented reality.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, it's a good segue, because I was just, so send your questions in if you haven't yet. So this is my last one, and then it's on you, and I will cold call if you don't questions. I think actually Rafa cold calls, not me, but we'd love your questions next. You mentioned a couple of things in that. You talked about maybe quantum computing is not quite there. Maybe it's 5-10 years away. You also said this is your 20th South by. Okay, so 20 years from now, we're sitting here and we're looking back and thinking about where things have gone, where Austin is. I just was talking to a couple of entrepreneurs. They said last year it felt like a lot was about the multiverse at South by. They said this year is a lot of clean energy, clean tech, and that effort. What's the thing or the thing or two that on your 40th South by that people are saying, gosh, I wish I'd seen that coming, or we should have been talking more about that today?
I'm used to putting together a 10-year plan, but 20-year plan, Jay.
You can do 10 if you need to,
No,
John.
I think, again, market timing, I've most often been too early. Fundamentally, it happens, the technology, the implementation in a very significant way. It always takes longer than one expects, but in many cases, it's bigger than anyone suspects. And I think we'll see that in the areas of quantum technologies 20 years from now. The world of the metaverse will be significant. Today, most of my questions, discussions earlier were around ChatGPT. I'm not long ChatGPT, the company, but the concept and the 12 startups I know of, as well as many of the artificial intelligence life sciences companies that I speak with, are very interested in learning. But again, I don't think it's about the company ChatGPT as much as it is about the area. Finally, I would say my belief, thinking back 20 years, the internet was booming in the dot-com bust, as I remember all too well, was about to happen, and was happening in real time for 3 years, both communications equipment and the dot-com bust. 20 years goes by awful quickly, as we tell our children, and it will go by very quickly. I think there are examples where Elon Musk and his team, what they're doing with SpaceX, will in 20 years be truly fundamentally important. And I really believe, again, in this area of AI and medicine, I still so often hear from really good doctors, why would I use technology to analyze this pathology slide? And I said, because with the use of technology, we're making the humans smarter. If today 1/3 of the pathology slides for prostate and breast cancer are incorrect, which is the exact number at many of our best hospitals, with technology, I've seen not only the cycle from 10 days move to 2 days in terms of getting that data back to patients and the doctors, but the accuracy is 95%. So again, what is so often the case in what, of course, is a fascinating time in the world of the press, everything is made out to be black and white. And I operate black and white from integrity, but all through the spectrum, it's never that black and white. And again, AI is not about replacing doctors. It's about improving the doctor's ability to deal with patients.
Thank you. And just, I guess, I'd wrap it up a little bit, and then we'll open up to questions. Things that you talked about that come to my mind. So ChatGPT has the faculty at UT freaked out, right? So think about that essay question you were going to assign. So faculty are doing, we're going to do more in-class exams, more oral exams, but also things like, they're doing things like seeding the entire class with the ChatGPT answer, and then say, now make it better. And so you think about how students are going to spend their time, it's going to be improving what the technology gives him or her, right? And not so much doing some of the rote stuff. But it's not just, to me, the low ends, the sort of low skill stuff that's going to change. It's going to be the high end things that, how we teach, how students learn, and the like. The other thing I would tell you from a university standpoint, I think if anything, the pandemic's reminded us that being around in person is special. I don't see that model changing for undergraduate at college experience. I think if anything, it's heightened our love of that. Where we're seeing a lot of interest in using technology to deliver sort of skills is full-fledged master's degrees. So we just rolled out a master's in AI that is fully online, and I think is going to have great potential. And then also unbundling a degree. We can do things as a university that don't require a full-fledged degree. We can take things and put them into credentialed chunks where you can have a certificate or some sort of badge that can go out into market and convey. So I think from our standpoint, taking a monolithic degree in a siloed school and forming those into things that are more horizontal or chunky and delivering the chunks, I think is something where you'll see us do more. So with that, I think Rafa is hopefully still, there he is, thank you. Fire away.
All right. So, Jim, for you, you've invested in successful companies like Meta, Etsy, Spotify. What are some of the key characteristics that these billion-plus-dollar companies have in common?
Each is a quite different story. There are commonalities, of course, but I'll give you the origin story of each. I went to Etsy in Dumbo, Brooklyn in 2008 and was blown away by the founding team. And it already was a significant female buyer-seller community. By the way, a mistake I made, I looked around Dumbo and I said, I believe this is really going to be fundamentally important. I didn't pull the trigger. I should have bought some commercial real estate in Dumbo. So, a lesson. The board, and we all see this, boards can be very good, but boards can also create damage and be dysfunctional. And the Etsy board meetings evolved in a certain way that a number of the venture capitalists and board members said, we'll never build a big business if we're just about women. We need to attract the men. And I was on the other side, having a genius mathematician, mother, etc. I said, we never lose by going after too small a market. We lose because we lose focus. And people were, okay, good idea. And then I was very fortunate in 2010 to be at a Microsoft CEO summit. And I was seated next to Jeff Bezos, who knows a thing or two about e-commerce. He had tried to buy Etsy. We had turned him down. And then I told him about this board discussion. Should we attract men, or can we build a great business with just women? And Jeff gave out his incredible laugh and said, those other board members and that advice is truly horrible. Double, triple down on women, you will build a great business. And so that's the Etsy origin. Spotify is the only deal, perhaps now there are two, which originated from World Economic Forum, where I have also just celebrated my 20th World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. And Daniel Ek was there. We had a meeting. He was introduced by a couple of friends. And I had been an early investor in a music service called Rhapsody. I had turned down Napster. Again, the pattern recognition sure helps. And after sitting down with Daniel Ek for 2 hours, I shook his hand and said, if you'll have me, I would like to invest. And there was no articulation about a business model. His insight was his passion for music and rolling out Spotify in Europe first because the US labels cause so much damage when it comes to the world of music. And again, you think about Facebook, Meta, one example of Mark Zuckerberg. There are many. There are two important things that happened, which I pulled the trigger to make the investment, and in 2007, we had an absolute disaster launch for advertising around privacy and security in New York. 99% disaster, 100% disaster. And I had been asking Mark to hire a chief operating officer for a couple of years, and he had resisted. And it came after that disaster in 2007, November, where he said, Jim, I've been listening. I'm ready to hire a chief operating officer. And the final interview, of course, was Sheryl Sandberg. She joined 2008. And that teamwork was phenomenal. So each is a little bit different. Part of the art is when to bring in significant leadership to help with the founders. And it's more art than science.
All right, we've got another question. How do you engage with external stakeholders? Central Health, City of Austin, the Downtown Alliance, chambers, et cetera, in Austin to build the innovation ecosystem here?
Is that for you?
I think it's for
for
you.
Jay.
I think it's for our president.
Yeah. No, thank you for the question. To me, so just at a high level, this opportunity around life science, technology, and innovation, I believe is going to be enormous. And for us, with the medical school and what we envision happening with building out more of an academic medical center, the spillovers in research, to me, that all just should happen. And it's back to the long game. It's a very long bet, but that's okay. So for us, it's working with each of those partners, trying to figure out what is it the role they want to play in that vision. What do they bring that they might be persuaded to throw in. Central Health has a very strong mission around caring for those who need help and otherwise can't provide for themselves. And we've got things we do there that we're very proud of, but we've also got ways we think to scale technology differently over time to enable care for those that just can't be done as easily today as we think we can do it. With the city, I'm very excited that Kirk Watson's in the chair. And he's part of the original genesis of that innovation district idea. And so I think he's going to be great as far as a partner with the university to try to make that happen. And then, we've also got our partner Ascension, Seton Ascension, and working with them, a massive and very strong healthcare provider in this area. And we've shown, I think, with a lot of the joint work, for example, at Dell Children's, that we can deliver a different kind of care in Austin that's ever been delivered here. And so how can we help that scale and reach even broader audiences and broader segments? And we're on our way. We've done that with some great work around cardio and heart, but we know there are more parts of that we can multiply out. So I think it's going to be phenomenal. And back to things we're going long. If I could go long life science and technology in this market in particular, I think it's going to be awesome.
Thanks for that. I think we're out of time, so appreciate the conversation. It was very interesting. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Big hand for our guests. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll hook 'em.
Yeah, thanks Jim. Thanks, Rafa. Thank you all. Hook 'em and let's go kick Kansas's ass.